Had a car accident and went blind while my cousin said my sister and fiancé were having an affair, had to have surgery to catch them planning to steal my $800K insurance. I was in a car accident that left me blind, and right when I thought things couldn't get worse, my cousin dropped a bombshell. She claimed my sister and fiancé were having an affair. On top of that, she suspected they were plotting to steal my $800,000 insurance settlement. I'm 26, and my life has flipped completely upside down. I went from being fiercely independent to needing help with even the simplest tasks. Being blind has forced me to rely on what others tell me, but it's left me second-guessing everyone's motives. My parents say one thing, Derek, my fiancé, says another, and my gut seems to whisper something entirely different. The hardest part is that I have no way to confirm anything for myself. I feel trapped, desperate to figure out who's truly on my side and who might be exploiting my vulnerability. A few days ago, my cousin Megan, who's been taking care of me since the accident, told me something that could shatter my world. Megan has been with me through everything for the past 6 months, helping with meals, getting dressed, and managing my day-to-day life. The accident was horrific. A delivery truck ran a red light and smashed into my car as I drove home from work. I spent 3 months in the hospital while doctors ran every test imaginable. My eyesight gradually worsened until, one day, it was gone completely. Megan was the only person who stayed by my side the entire time. My family visited occasionally, but Megan showed up every single day without fail. Losing my vision has changed me in ways I never imagined. Before the accident, I had a good job, lived in my own apartment, and was planning my wedding. Now, I can barely navigate my own home without running into furniture. But what terrifies me most is the thought of losing Derek. Derek and I met in college, and despite his flaws, I've always believed in him. He struggled throughout his 20s, often quitting jobs within months because he clashed with his bosses or got bored. His parents enabled this pattern by covering his expenses, which only made it harder for him to grow up. I agreed to marry him after he finally started showing signs of maturity. He landed a stable job at an insurance company and managed to keep it for over a year. Even then, my parents weren't convinced. My dad, in particular, hoped I'd end up with his business partner's son instead of Derek. I actually tried breaking up with Derek after learning my blindness was permanent. I thought he'd see me as a burden now that his life was finally stabilizing. But Derek refused to leave, insisting he'd worked too hard to become the man I deserved. It wasn't until later that I found out my dad had even offered Derek money to walk away, a fact my mom casually let slip. Derek turned the offer down, which surprised everyone, given his history of prioritizing financial gain. During my hospital stay, I was convinced my life was over. I couldn't watch TV, scroll through my phone, or do anything to distract myself. Derek became my lifeline during those weeks, visiting daily with audiobooks, stories about work, and encouragement to help me adjust to using my other senses. The nurses were constantly telling me how lucky I was to have such a dedicated fiancé, but my mom wasn't sold. She pointed out that Derek always visited when other people were around, never late at night or in the early mornings when I felt most vulnerable. After 3 long months, my parents suggested I move to their Vermont estate. They even offered their guest house to make things easier for me. Derek was adamantly against the idea, arguing that staying in familiar surroundings would aid my recovery. That's when Megan stepped in. My parents suggested she move in with us, given her experience as a professional caregiver. She's been doing this since she was 18, taking care of her own mother when she got sick. At first, the arrangement worked well. Megan managed my medical needs, Derek went to work, and I began relearning how to function in my new reality. I even started working with a specialist who helps blind individuals use computers. My sister Alice helped with wedding plans, bringing a sense of normalcy back into my life. Alice and I have always been close. She's 2 years younger than me and the outgoing one, always the social butterfly while I focused on my career. Having her around made things feel less bleak. Megan, on the other hand, stayed professional and distant, focusing solely on her caregiving duties. But one morning, Megan broke her usual silence. While helping me get dressed, she said she needed to share something important. She explained that in her 10 years as a caregiver, she's learned to pick up on subtle relationship issues. She even helped an elderly client uncover financial exploitation by his son. After some hesitation, Megan finally came out with it. She suspected Derek and Alice were having an affair. I made her repeat it, not because I didn't hear her, but because I couldn't believe it. It's not perfect, but my friend Samuel from my support group recommended a proofreader who specializes in working with blind clients. Thanks to that, my posts should be much clearer now. Funny enough, this proofreader also happens to be friends with my eye doctor, a connection that turned out to be surprisingly relevant later on. These past weeks have been nothing short of a nightmare filled with paranoia and confusion. Every interaction between Derek and Alice feels suspicious. For instance, last Tuesday, I heard them laughing together in the kitchen, but the second I walked in, they went completely silent. Just yesterday, Derek took forever, like 20 minutes, to answer when I asked how his workday went. And Alice? She quickly changed the subject entirely. Before my accident, their responses were so quick and natural. Now, everything feels calculated, like they're silently checking in with each other before speaking. When I brought this up, Derek brushed it off, saying I was just being paranoid. He claimed they were simply being more thoughtful with their words because of my condition. I might have believed that if I didn't already notice how they speak normally when they think I'm asleep. Megan has been my lifeline through all of this, literally and figuratively. She's been watching them whenever she can, but it's tricky since she's also busy helping me with almost everything. She takes me to physical therapy 3 times a week, helps me shower, and assists with my exercises. The only time she isn't around are when I'm asleep or when Derek insists on helping me instead. Even so, she's noticed things. Last week, she caught Derek and Alice in the garage having a heated, whispered argument. When she confronted them, they claimed they were just discussing wedding centerpieces. The odd part? We finalized the design for those centerpieces last month. During my last checkup, my doctor shared some surprising news. The damage to my eyes isn't as permanent as they initially thought. There's a surgical procedure that could restore about 75% of my vision. But it's incredibly risky. The surgery could lead to severe complications, possibly affecting my entire nervous system. It would require multiple procedures over several weeks and only has a 40% success rate. My doctor left the decision up to me. Megan believes this could be my chance to regain some independence, but Derek's reaction felt off. He's been discouraging me from considering it, saying we should save the insurance money for a future house instead. That struck me as strange because he used to encourage me to try every treatment option available. My older brother, who's a pharmacist, did some research into the post-op medications and said the regimen is actually less intense than what I've dealt with before. Part of me keeps imagining the look on Derek's face if I surprised him at our wedding by walking down the aisle with my vision restored. Megan, however, is more focused on how this could be a way to uncover the truth about Derek and Alice. The recovery period would mean I'd be home about 3 weeks before the wedding, assuming everything went smoothly. But I can't shake the guilt. Is it wrong to consider a medical procedure just to catch them in the act? What if I put myself through all this trauma only to find out I was mistaken? My therapist insists I need to be sure about my reasons, whether I'm doing this for myself or as a trap. Update number 2, 3 months later. It's been 3 months, and I decided to go through with the surgery after weeks of research and talking to former patients. The preparation process was intense. I had to stop certain medications, undergo numerous pre-surgery screenings, and even gain some weight because the doctor said it would make recovery easier. Before starting the main procedure, I spent 5 days in pre-op. I told everyone I was attending a specialized Braille program in Boston. Derek and Alice immediately suggested that Megan should go back to her family during this time to save money, arguing that paying her full salary while I was away didn't make sense. They even called my parents to back them up, claiming Megan deserved a break. My mom agreed, saying it would give Derek and Alice time to finalize wedding preparations. It all felt too convenient, but I couldn't argue without exposing my real plans. Thankfully, Megan found a small apartment near the hospital where I had the surgery. She split her time between visiting me and picking up shifts at a local nursing home to cover her expenses. The surgery itself went better than expected, but the recovery was brutal. I endured 4 weeks of severe headaches and extreme sensitivity to light. The doctors had to keep adjusting my medication because my body kept rejecting the initial prescriptions. Through it all, Megan was there, helping me practice eye exercises and reading updates from my medical charts. During those hospital nights, Megan shared stories about her life. Her childhood was a world apart from mine. While I spent my teenage years at piano lessons and summer camps, she was working at a diner at age 14 to help pay her mom's medical bills. Her father had left when she was young, and her mom developed MS shortly after. She never finished college because she had to work full-time as a caregiver. Meanwhile, my biggest worry in my 20s was deciding whether to work at my dad's firm or follow my own path. Her resilience really put my privilege into perspective. This time in the hospital changed me. Before the accident, my life was consumed by wedding planning and trying to mold Derek into the perfect husband. I had this idyllic vision of a house in the suburbs, 2 kids, and weekend barbecues. Now, lying in that hospital bed, terrified of what I might discover once I could see again, I started to question everything. Maybe instead of saving for a house with Derek, I could use the insurance money to start a business, travel, or even go back to school. The accident forced me to realize I'd been living someone else's dream instead of my own. Wow, this story reached such a powerful climax. Let me rephrase it with your requested tone and adjustments. The wedding is officially off. 4 days ago, I ended my engagement in front of 60 guests at what was supposed to be a pre-wedding celebration. Everyone was there, Derek's family, my college friends, co-workers, even some old neighbors. The party started off normally, champagne flowing, appetizers being passed around, and endless congratulations about the wedding. Derek's mom couldn't stop showing everyone photos of the beachfront property she hoped we'd buy after the wedding. Meanwhile, Alice played the perfect maid of honor, charming everyone and keeping their glasses full. I waited until after dinner to make my announcement. When I took off my glasses and told everyone I could see again, the room erupted in cheers. My mom cried, Derek's dad called it a miracle, and the excitement was contagious, except for Derek and Alice. They froze, faces pale, like they'd seen a ghost. Derek just sat there, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, while Alice suddenly found the floor very interesting. People were clamoring for details, when did this happen? How? So, I explained everything, the risky surgery I'd undergone months ago, the painful recovery, and my choice to keep it a secret until now. Megan, always playing her part perfectly, chimed in, asking why I hadn't saved the reveal for the wedding day. That's when I turned to Derek and Alice and said, "This is my wedding gift to you." The room fell silent. I started listing specific dates and times. The afternoon they thought I was at physical therapy, but they were in the pool house together. The late night meetings, in Derek's car. The kisses they thought no one saw. With each detail, Alice's face turned ghostly pale, and Derek's hands started trembling. When Alice tried to deny it, I described the birthmark on her lower back, something I saw Derek touching in the kitchen just 3 days ago. That shut her up fast. Derek, though, had the audacity to flip the narrative. He stood up and accused me of being dishonest for lying about the surgery. He claimed my trust issues were what had ruined our relationship. My dad had to physically restrain me from lashing out when Derek spewed that garbage. That's when I pulled out the folder Megan and I had prepared. Inside were printouts of his recent credit card statements, hotel charges he couldn't explain. Screenshots of his browsing history, including searches for divorce lawyers. And the smoking gun, an email to his cousin detailing how he planned to access my $800,000 insurance settlement once we were married. The room exploded. My mom started screaming in a mix of English and Korean, Derek's parents looked horrified, and his sister actually broke down in tears, admitting she'd caught them together but hadn't known how to tell me. Alice tried to stammer out an excuse, saying, "It just happened. We never meant to hurt you." I told her to save her fake tears for her next catering gig. Derek sat there, frozen, as I laid it all out for everyone to see. His mom begged him to explain, but he just looked down, defeated. After 30 minutes of chaos, people taking sides, shouting, and trying to calm things down, I'd had enough. I told Derek he had 24 hours to pack his things and leave my house. He tried to argue that his name was on the lease, but I reminded him that my parents had paid the rent for the last year. My dad's already called a lawyer to ensure Derek has no claim. Alice tried to follow me as I left, babbling apologies, but Megan stepped in and blocked her. Last I heard, Alice is staying at a motel since her parents won't let her come home. Since that night, I've been in my room, ignoring the flood of messages on my phone. College friends want to take me on a trip to clear my head. Derek's mom keeps calling to apologize. But right now, I just need space. The only person I'm talking to is Megan. She's been bringing me meals and helping me sort through what's left of my relationship. The pain comes in waves. One moment, I feel relieved that it's over, the next, I'm staring at old photos, wondering if the betrayal started even earlier than I realized. Mostly, I feel foolish for not seeing the signs. My mom warned me about Derek's habit of living off others. First his parents, then me. He hasn't held a steady job since college, always finding himself while I paid the bills. The accident payout was probably the biggest payday he'd ever seen. At least I discovered the truth before signing those marriage papers. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive. Derek and Alice are out of my life for good. My parents want reconciliation, saying family is family. But as far as I'm concerned, Megan is the only family member I can trust. And for that, I'm grateful.